Reading an essay like The Myth of the Latin Woman is a way to learn from someone who is both an artist and a brilliant essayist. Imitating something like that is an excellent way to develop a strong essay. But some of us learn better from looking at failures. So let's look at a ChatGPT fail and think about why an essay produced by all of our collected knowledge on the internet using advanced algorithms can give information that compares and contrasts and yet still make an epic fail of a compare-contrast argument about something as simple as a hot water or cold water pie crust. So, I put in the prompt for what I would make as my own personal compare-contrast essay, which is why a hot water pie crust is better than a cold water pie crust, and gave that prompt to ChatGPT. What ChatGPT spit out did not disappoint in its epic failure to make any argument at all. So let's begin with this beginning paragraph, which we have said is the most important next to the title. So first of all, it didn't make a title. But then it made this two-sentence opening paragraph. Hot water pie crust and cold water pie crust are two distinct methods for making pie crusts, each with its own set of characteristics. Let's explore the differences and similarities between these two techniques. That's a paragraph that has a lot of words, though not enough sentences to even be a complete paragraph, and still says nothing. So first of all, did you notice the repetition? Yeah. Hot water pie crust, cold water pie crust, different making pie crusts, different characters, has its own set of characteristics. We know this. That is too obvious. That should not be included here. And then ending with let's explore differences and similarities is a statement that is not a thesis because it doesn't make an argument. And the entire paper follows that, and that there is no argument, although there is information which is somewhat accurate, at least in several places, about pie crusts. So it can give some accurate information about cold water pie crust and hot water pie crust, and show that there's some difference, but still never makes an argument. And beyond all this, after reading this two repetitive sentences, are you likely to keep going? Or are you going to move on to something that opens with the compelling lines of a song and then a deeply personal sort of reaction? Something that grabs your attention, evokes emotion, does something beyond this. So, I wrote my own introduction here. And in my introduction to the argument, first I begin with the title, Taking a Stand Against Martha Stewart, Julia Child, and James Beard, Making a Hot Water Pie Crust. So, in this title, I've listed first two sort of culinary icons from American television, Stewart and Child, and then James Beard Award is something that is presented to people who are identified as the best chef. And so I'm taking my stand against cultural icons on this making a hot water pie. That's a bit of hyperbole here. Nobody is in fact taking me on this, and in fact none of them care about what I say about a hot water pie, but because it's sort of a startling statement, it catches the reader's attention and it reflects the attitudes towards cold water versus hot water pie crusts in American society today, which is giants like Stewart and Child and James Beard Award-winning chefs are all proponents of the cold water pie crust. And so my grandmother's recipe is something that is unique and different, and for me, stands up to all these different professional opinions. So I open with a statistic, or with a fact about these different icons. And then I give one of their statements, which I find rather provocative. And it's a quote about every great baker knows the one non-negotiable of a great pie is ice water. Well, those statements are totalizing statements and generalizations. You can never say every great baker knows and that there's something that is non-negotiable in almost any situation. If you are not dealing with, say, accounting, where 1 + 1 had better equal 2 at the end, or we're all going to be in trouble. Now, Reggie is making these claims knowingly, like that's her point, is to use that hyperbole to sell her argument. But for me, it allows me to sort of set up the strength of the contrast here, or the meaning, by challenging something that all great chefs believe is non-negotiable. And then I lead into a little bit of a personal anecdote, just like the myth of the Latin woman, where I talk about, or rather reflect on, my grandmother. She's a woman who has this incredible background in history. She was always a fighter, and she learned a hot water pie crust that she passed on to me, sort of in defiance of the cold water pie crust groupies. And I think the flavor and texture of this pie not only stand up to the cold water crust, but it is a pie that takes less time to prepare, is easier to roll out, and because it's slightly more subtle, complements subtle fillings without being overwhelming, while it can still be used in strong savory pies, thus making it an all-around winner for the busy American kitchen today. So have my sort of my stance, my surprising point, my personal note, and it all ends on a thesis that's making a strong argument, and an argument that other people are going to challenge. As you're making a compare-contrast argument, you can take a stance that challenges what other people think. In fact, that's sort of the point. If you just lay out the differences, which is what ChatGPT does, without taking a stance, it's not an argument and it's not as meaningful. So, this takes a strong stance, uses citations, uses background, and does more than the opening 2 lines here.